It all started with an idea. The vision that players in an online game would be able to decide their fate on their own and not be led down paths created by developers. Well, I think they should be. I began developing the game in 2001, but I couldn't create all the visual assets like the models, the worlds, so I reached out to game development forums to find good level designers and artists. Slowly the team began to grow into one that could actually manage to create games. The biggest motivation was to achieve the unthinkable, to create a complete MMO with a team of which nobody received any payment at all, had no experience in creating such games, but would still be able to make it to the end and release it. In 2004 we came to work together with a small mobile company called Ojam who wanted to enter the MMO market. Even though we were able to have all the player models redone with them, it was clear that they didn't have any more experience in publishing online games than we had. Open beta and closed beta together lasted almost 2 years. In that time we replaced the game engine, we had to convert all the assets to the new engine format, and including all the worlds. And we replaced all the character models and items. That was just crazy. I did the user interface 3 times. Implementing user interfaces is really a pain. The 3rd time almost broke me. I put myself under so much pressure. I just wanted to get it done in time, even when the planned schedule was totally unrealistic. Face of Mankind was released in 2006 with a subscription-based business model. We even had this little retail box, which barely anyone bought, so that's probably the only one left.
I remember my first day in Face of Mankind very clearly. The calendar said May 1st, 2414, so that was late January 2010.
The best experience I ever had in Face of Mankind is when I asked this dude for a sandwich and it started like a galactic war. It ultimately ended with a bunch of people being angry and court-martialed, and then that led to another war.
I remember my first day in farm wasn't pleasant, you know. It was very hard.
Face of Mankind can't really be bottled, like its essence can't be bottled and just labelled. I believe it's a very unique game.
Describing Face of Mankind to someone is quite hard. You know, when people look at the game trailers, the first they see is a bunch of armored guys fighting each other. It's much more than that. Face of Mankind is certainly a game, but it's also some kind of social experiment, because there are almost no rules. Yes, we had a lot of problems with hackers. We had a series of denial of service attacks happening at the time. I don't think our players liked our publishing partner very much. After around 18 months, they shut down the servers and cancelled the contract. After that, I tried to get the game back on its feet on my own. I called it Face of Mankind Rebirth. Well, 6 months later, I had to realize that not only I have burned out, but my finances as well. So it was rather painful to finally declare that I had to cancel the development. Later that year, someone built a server emulator that showed me the desire the community had for a game like Face of Mankind. At that point, only the community kept the game alive. And I guess that convinced me to not give up and let the game go. So I started rewriting the entire server code. I wanted it to be more scalable and better utilize multi-core systems. Rewriting the entire server also required many code parts of the client to change, as all the network packets had changed as well. But doing all that again showed me the beauty of server development. I just love it. The first contact with Charles was by email. He wrote me that he wanted to buy the game, so we sent all these emails back and forth, must have been hundreds, until we reached an agreement.
Nexeon Technologies was originally founded to do server hosting and billing solutions for other companies. However, a lot of us were actually players of the original Face of Mankind, so when it shut down, we were actually quite saddened. We decided together to contact Marco to purchase the game and develop it into the sandbox that we knew it could be. After a lot of discussions with Marco, we all decided that he should continue the development while we focus on the server hosting and the billing solutions for the game.
In 2010, we pushed the concept for Face of Mankind 2. We worked on a technology demo, concept art, and prepared everything to convince potential publishers or investors. At GDC Europe, we presented it to all the big names in the industry. We didn't even ask for much, but I guess it wasn't the best of time for investments.
In order to further advance the creation of Face of Mankind, we decided to contact Marco to see if we could assist with the development of the game. After a lot of reasoning and negotiations, it was decided that Nexeon Technologies would exclusively develop Face of Mankind moving forward, with Marco actually providing insight and support as the previous creator of the game.
Developing a sandbox MMO really isn't that easy to do. We've spent the last 2 years trying to figure out how to get it right, and we've made a lot of mistakes, but we feel like thanks to these mistakes we've grown. Without the experience gained during these formative years, I don't know where the game would be right now.
At Game Developers Conference 2011 in San Francisco, Charles and I met for the first time. We had the time to discuss the game and to see interesting lectures about game development. Being at GDC gives you this focus, a focus that you didn't have before. You see all these other developers, some big and famous, but also many who are struggling the same way you are.
In June of 2012, Marco came back on the project for some time. It was decided that the combat system of the game needed to be changed entirely, something with more variety and more depth for the economy. The choice was then made to create this new attribute system where basically you would be able to define your build using the statistics that were previously invisible to players. We took on this new approach of absolute transparency.
We pushed as much money as we could spare into advertising this, and we aimed to revive the game with the new combat system. Things improved for a bit, but unfortunately it just didn't last. A lot of the core issues with the game were still present, and we were still too ignorant to realize how they affected the gameplay.
When October of 2012 came around, we were really disillusioned to the very concept of the game. We had spent so much time and so much energy in it that we just felt as if it was pointless. We began thinking of different solutions. We spent months talking about what was wrong with the game, and in the end, we near unanimously decided that the player-driven aspects of the game needed to be scaled back, and we needed more traditional mechanics to drive players.
Many ideas were on the table at that time, even one that would turn the game into a lobby game with matches that you can join. But that wouldn't be fun anymore.
I was in a really dark place during that time. I felt like everything I'd done was wrong. I was entirely disillusioned to the idea of a player-driven sandbox, and I felt that I, as a developer, was entirely a failure. It was then that we went to GDC Online in Austin, Texas. I went to a seminar by one of the senior game designers at CCP. It was talking about the pillars that supported EVE Online, the game design principles that made it what it was. This was probably the most revolutionary hour of my career. Everything he explained, I already knew. I realized in that hour that I was not a failure as a developer. I realized that our issue was that we hadn't gone far enough. All of the designs that I had once shoved aside, all of the ideas that I deemed too ridiculous, I realized that these were what we needed to save the game. The moment I got back to the hotel room, I began writing. I put down every single thing that I had ever thought of as a player and as a developer. My goal was to just come up with something so ridiculous that it had to work, and those designs are what eventually became the Fall of the Dominion milestone. I have spent the last 7 months working tirelessly on this milestone. I've talked to the community, I've reached out to veterans, I wanted to make everyone possible excited about this milestone. I've reached out to Marco, I wanted to bring him on board. He was the source of all of this idea, all of this inspiration. He is responsible for creating the game, and I believe that he should be a part of it.
With time running out and the milestone still far from completion, we had to think of a way to save the game. We decided to launch a Kickstarter campaign involving the community to help raise it to new heights.
We want to finish the game and finally realize the vision of ultimate player freedom in an online game. But we cannot do it without your help.
Our goal with this milestone is to reshape the entire game. Whether we reach our $50,000 goal and change all of the gameplay mechanics, or we reach our $250,000 goal and recreate the entire game on a new engine, the goal will remain the same. We want to make Face of Mankind Fall of the Dominion the best sandbox game we can with the resources we're given.
None of this would be possible without all of you, though. We spent the last 10 years working tirelessly to create the best game that we can, and in order to see this dream to completion, we need your support.
If you let players loose to do whatever they want to do, all kinds of things can happen. Obviously, the first that happens is chaos and mayhem. Players fighting each other randomly, griefing and all that. But shortly after that, something very interesting happens. Players begin to organize themselves into factions, squads, giving each other ranks, and define all kinds of tasks that they deem necessary.
Face of Mankind is a sandbox where players can find their own role. The game allows them to shape their own gameplay experience and that of the players around them.
It's about human interactions and everything that evolves from them. It's about society, politics, justice, wars, survival and managing the economy. It's about factions, power and money. And above all, it's about friendship.
What makes Face of Mankind so unique is really the entirety of the game. You have this player-driven open-world cyberpunk MMO shooter. You string that all together, there's nothing quite like it.
Things are always changing, and it's always the product of someone on the end of the keyboard, just like you.
The whole thing is player control. That's it. People fighting, politics, roleplay, trolling. I've never seen anything like it in my life, and I don't think I ever will. If, that doesn't sell you nothing well.
We want to make the game free to play. We think it's important to have a large player population, which results in a more lively world, and we want everyone to try out the game and then tell their friends about it.
To make money, we'll offer an optional subscription that we call Premium Gameplay. What this includes is additional unlocked features and conveniences for the player. We'll also offer an in-game marketplace where players can purchase unique gear and cool personal items using the founder coins from the Kickstarter.
Without all of your support, our adventure ends here. We won't be able to finish this milestone, and honestly, after all that we put into it, we don't really want to see it end that way.
It's interesting, really. Whether or not this game gets released depends a lot upon the players who have played the game for many years, and hopefully those who want to play the game for numerous more years to come.
Please support our project on Kickstarter, it doesn't matter by how much. The future of Face of Mankind now lies in all of your hands, and we will try to give back your support by creating a great game.